So, hello everyone. This is Rocket Lab Weekly EP016. I'm here with Dave. And hello, Dave. Thank you for being here.
No problem.
And we might have Matt coming. He hasn't answered yet. But I thought that we can start and go over. It's been a very, very fascinating week. One of them, let me share my screen. I forgot to do that. So one of them has been the stock price of Rocket Lab, because the market has gone to all-time highs, whereas our dear beloved Rocket Lab is doing something on its own, something completely different.
Yeah.
And your girlfriend seemed to have sold on the top. She sold on the top, no, on this green.
Did she? So she sold, I know, at 580. So yeah, that looks like pretty much around the top, pretty close.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And she bought back yesterday, no?
Yeah, 470, which was actually pretty funny to me, because then it rose again after she bought, and I was just like, nobody gets this lucky. So we'll see. Like, it could drop more, but
you have to marry this girl. And I don't know. You don't need to save for the wedding. You just, honey, you just trade the wedding price, and then we're safe.
I wouldn't risk all that on short-term trading. But yeah, it's nice when it works, and then when it doesn't work.
I tell you something funny is that me and my dad, we sold some put options. And then we have a put option that is expiring next week at 450 strike price, So
yeah,
at one point we're like, oh, this is cutting it close. We were like, this is a for sure trade. Like, we will not be put the shares.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, oh, we're cutting it close. And then on Friday, when it was going down, I was like, okay, I don't think that we will be put the shares. And normally it's best to sell put options on red days. So I told my dad, like, I think we should sell the next one now, because it's like such a red, and it's been so many red days in a row.
Okay.
And then it was 470. We put in the order, and then it didn't go through, and the stock just up. So
it's too bad.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think this is bad, just like, I've had put options sitting there before, and it was literally like 1 cent, and it would expire on the Friday, and I'm like, is this going to get triggered or not? It's like strike is like 560, and it's like 561, and it's fluctuating. It's it can be interesting if you leave it all the way to expiry. So
yeah. So that's the excitement for Rocket Lab stock price. And basically, what do you think is causing? I'm curious about your opinion, because okay, let's put it this way. I look at the stocks that I watch, and none of them are at all-time highs, and all of them seem to be having a pullback. And
it is kind of funny, because like, I was looking at, like, I have a list kind of stocks I follow, and then a lot of them were red, and then I look and it's like all-time highs, and like, this is weird to me, because just the ones that are participating versus the ones that aren't. So
yeah, it feels like it's again the Magnificent Seven that is without Tesla, like Magnificent Six.
I guess so. Yeah, the Magnificent Six, because I do own Tesla, and that's definitely not all-time highs.
Yeah. Cool.
So, but I think you asked, like, what do I think is driving this downward move?
Exactly.
To be honest, like, I'm not too sure. Sometimes this stock moves in such weird ways that I don't even think it's worth trying to understand, like, the short-term moves. You can see some patterns in the chart and stuff like that, but even like, if we back up to when it was rising all the way to $8 per share, like, I didn't really know what in particular was causing that sharp of a rise, because it literally like doubled in a very short period of time. And so sometimes it just has these big moves. So
May to July, like in 3 months.
Yeah, you got to just get used to a bit of a wild ride, I think.
Yeah. So this just shows, nobody can predict the stock price, and we are not stock price experts here. And
Except for
we
my
follow
fiance.
exactly. She's the only one who knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
So we don't know what makes this stock tick. I just was looking at it on the Friday trading, and when we were down here, I was like, we are at the same level. This is when the Electron rocket blew up, and I'm like,
Yeah.
we are at the same level. And since then, like, there's been all these announcements, there is all this like guidance, there is the 500 million contract, we know that they're gunning for even bigger contracts, and we're at the same level. And I'm like, how? But I learned to not have emotions on this stock. It's just buy when it's a good price and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm looking forward to there actually being like earnings. At that point, I feel like it's hard for it to drop low, and it's like, okay, the price to earnings is now 15 or whatever. It gives it a bit more of a solid base. So
Yeah. Okay, since it's funny that you bring up earnings, because I started to be a little bit worried that the earnings could go both ways. And so one of the ways that it could go is we go into earnings and they reiterate the guidance that they did for Q1, which was a fantastic guidance. I think they said it might be their first 100 million quarter.
mm-hmm.
And then we are expecting a full year guidance also. But
I don't know. They often only guide out one quarter, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, I'm in the Palantir world where
I would love full year guidance, but
anyway. Okay, but let's say that they give a guidance on Q2 that, okay, this will be our second 100 million quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can safely extrapolate that then they're doing freaking amazing, and this is going to continue. Or we can go into those earnings and they can say that, okay, Neutron is delayed, because I see more and more people complaining about not having the Archimedes engine ready on the pad. And it's very interesting because Peter Beck said that part is not an innovative part of the rocket, and he has like zero worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched your bearish video where the guy said that normally like the engine takes like 2-3 years to make it into the rockets, like historically, if you look at it.
Yeah.
And so one bad news can be that, okay, Neutron is delayed. And then the second bad news is we're supposed to have like a lot of launches this year, and then it seems like we're not getting the launches, and they're delayed. And if they change that also, but at the same time, the stock price is insanely low going into the earnings. But what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so in terms of the earnings call, yeah. On Electron front, I'm not really too worried. I mean, I think they were looking at a weather system, and they always seem to have a slow start to the year and kind of finish strong. At least since I've been following them, that's kind of what seems to happen. And then launches just always get rescheduled and moved around and stuff. So not too worried about that yet. But keep an eye on it for sure. Archimedes, I would be a little bit more worried that they're launching a rocket with this engine at the end of the year. I'd be a little bit unsure about that one. But yeah, so maybe they have to say something, right? Because they previously said that they would static fire in 2023, and then they didn't. So they must address it in some way.
Yeah, and I also want to show something that you tweeted or retweeted. You remember Peter Beck said when he was asked, like he said, what I would be watching is once we start building the infrastructure, that means that we're getting very, very close, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here they are. It looks like they're...
Yeah. It's a little hard to see in the right image. Just, I think it's, I don't know, just really sunny or something with the reflection, but yeah, but it's not paved yet. So
yeah, but it's moving. It's
definitely moving. Yeah.
Yeah. I have one question. We got this comment from Christopher Bell. I'll just say everyone is wrong about launch cadence speculation, I'll leave it at that. Could you go into more details, Christopher, what you mean by this?
I think Chris always tends to imply he has like some information on, I think for Virginia specifically, but I'm not too sure. Maybe we'll see what he says.
Yeah. Yes. So back to the earnings call. So sorry, I maybe cut you off there. So they have to give a guidance on Neutron, and you're not worried about the cadence. Like are you very optimistic going into this? Are you like are you so optimistic you're buying call options with your wedding money or
no? Yeah, to be honest, I've just been trying to, like, any cash that I get, I haven't been investing in the market just because, the wedding is not that far away. And long term, I'm confident. Short term, anything can happen. So my philosophy is if you need the money in under a year, you probably shouldn't invest it. So haven't been investing a lot of new cash, but again, I would just, play it for the long term as opposed to trying to trade the moves around the earnings. I'm not worried about Electron. We'll see what he says about Archimedes, but yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm on this regard, I'm too new to Rocket Lab, right? Because I guess if you have been around for a long time, you sound very confident that, yeah, like these launches always get rescheduled, So I guess this is still a bit new for me. But I think that the space systems part, as far as I understand, they have the Global Star satellites in Q1, and they will be able to recognize a lot of revenue on that, because apparently this is what I understood from the earlier earnings calls, that they put in a lot of work, but how the contract was, they were not able to recognize revenue. And that one is not weather dependent, it's not customer dependent, it's everything is within their warehouse. And then they got the 515 million new contract. I don't know how much of that was calculated into this one, because they also said that contract is also back heavy, meaning that they will be able to recognize a lot more revenue in the end, but it's more linear than the global star satellites were. So it might be that they surprise on the space system side and they disappoint on the launch cadence side. But I don't know. For me, it's like a coin flip. Like I can see that the stock like goes down 30% or goes up 30%. Like
yeah, for me, like there's always so much going on around launch and rockets, and like there's always another rocket people are speculating about, or there's always delays for everyone in rockets and launch. But the space systems just gives me so much comfort that like they have that kind of steady backbone of revenues that will come in regardless of how lumpy launch is and if things get delayed, and that is growing very well. So
yeah, exactly. Okay, and another news this week is this one. We got a new analyst covering Rocket Lab, and they basically talk about the business of Rocket Lab, and they are, one of the key interesting things is that they see profitability within the next 1 to 3 years. They see the stock price at $8 with a significant upside if things go well. Did you see this announcement?
Yeah, I did. I haven't read the full report yet, but I kind of read the highlights and stuff and saw some of it. I thought it was interesting. Thought it was good news, but they're kind of pretty in line with most other analysts out there, I think. So it wasn't like earth shattering, like, oh my God, their price targets double what these other analysts are expecting. It was kind of in line, but I think I was kind of comparing what they had for profitability versus my own numbers, and it was in the same ballpark. So I think it's good to have more and more people covering the stock, and hopefully that gets it more attention as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting with Rocket Lab that I've seen this on Palantir and many other stocks that you can't rely on analysts. Like there is just like so many analysts that are very good on certain stocks, or they have had very good calls. It's like Jim Cramer. He gives opinion on so many stocks that sometimes he has to be right if you give so many opinions. But it is comforting for me to see that at least it's matching with my numbers and as far as I understand your numbers, like it's pretty much in the ballpark. And it kind of gives a little confidence. And usually when you have new analysts come up, then normally the stock price gets a boost sometimes. And here in true Rocket Lab fashion, like it seems like every good news gets met with a huge red day. we had the same reaction.
Yeah, well, I guess it gave her a chance to buy back in, so can't complain too much. But the one thing I thought was interesting with this report is most of the other ones I've read haven't talked about the potential for significant further upside beyond their price targets. So the fact that they're saying, if they execute as well as they should be able to, it could be like well beyond that, then yeah, that's a good little bonus, I guess.
Yeah. And also that they see profitability. That's also something that, or maybe I haven't, because I don't pay attention to analysts, so maybe I didn't see the other ones. But here it's very like between 1 to 3 years. I mean that's quite a prediction,
Yeah, they're projecting 2026. So some people might find that a little disappointing that it's a little further out than they want, but I think maybe in terms of the first profitable quarter, we could be looking late 2025, and then the first full year of profitability could be 2026.
Yeah, at least as you and me are very long-term investors, I'm just happy that there's even a path. Like I'm happy that there's so many other space companies where you're like talking about like the cash is running out, there's no way to raise capital, and even if they raise capital, there's like not even a way to achieve profitability. And here it's like, is it in 1 year, is it in 3 years, is it in 5 years? I'm just happy that there's a path.
Yeah, there's a lot of other space companies. They're not even talking about the when, they're talking about like the how can they do it, or is it possible? It can be risky. A lot of those companies out there that have had problems, I think, obviously Astra. Oh, and then Chris replied here, I see.
Yeah. So 2 things. First is low confirmed launches for Q3. Second is lack of confirmed launches at Wallops. I actually expecting them to exceed current scheduled launches. Okay, that's new.
So he thinks more than 22. That'd be great if it did happen.
Yeah, that would be. And I mean, I kind of agree with him that I also had this. I saw a lot of people discuss on Twitter, that we're only getting 1 launch in January, and we have this 1 launch that we're owed from Q4. So it should be 6 launches now, and then how do we even reach this quarter? And I was also thinking that in Q3 they left a lot of room for they only have 3 launches there, and they can easily catch up.
Would not surprise me at all if they end up adding launches to Q3.
Yeah. Cool. Now I actually had quite some people message me because you did a Rocket Lab Bear video this week.
Yeah, like an interview kind of discussion type thing. Yeah,
it was really, really good. The funny thing for me was that the bear that you found, like he was a Rocket Lab shareholder, no?
Yeah, I have yet to find like any full bears to talk to, but he is a Rocket Lab shareholder who believes in kind of the space systems side of things and is not a huge fan of Neutron's design. So we really went into what doesn't he like about Neutron, and he's follows the industry very closely and is pretty knowledgeable. So it was an interesting discussion, a long one though.
Yeah, he raised some very, very interesting points. And could you like comment on the video? Like, what did you think about him? Did this change your viewpoint at all?
Some interesting points were definitely raised. The one thing I think I was just thinking so much about, like, okay, what are we going to talk about next, and the next question, and all this other stuff, and what he was saying. I probably could have pushed back a little bit more on some of those things, but like very clearly in terms of like the physics and engineering and stuff, he does know more than me, so that's a little difficult. But he was saying how he thought it'd be difficult to expand neutron and grow it bigger because of the tapering, where the base is so much wider than the tip. But if you look at the renders on their redesign, when they kind of did updates, tapering is much less severe, seems very straight up towards the fairing. So I kind of feel like maybe that wouldn't be that as big of an issue as he thinks. And then, yeah, he made some good points around the fairing. So obviously there's a big trade-off where they're holding the fairing with the rocket and re-landing it all together. SpaceX fishes those out of the water. Electron, they found, no big deal really to get that out of the water and refurbish it, get it ready to go again. So then he was like, well, do we really want to pay the expense in terms of performance to keep these fairings with the rocket the whole time? That's a kind of interesting take I didn't really think about.
Did you actually go ahead?
I was just wondering what thoughts you kind of had if you watched it.
Yeah, I'm also not a rocket engineer, but he did bring up some very interesting points. The only thing, like, I think he might have been right on a few points. And I think that when these rocket companies make these announcements of how they're going to do certain things, I think you always have to take it with a grain of salt, because obviously if it pans out in your CAD computer model and then you try to do it and it doesn't work, then you will do something else that works instead, right? And I feel that Peter Beck is definitely not shy on trying things. Like, for example, they had the idea of recovering electrons with the helicopters. And then you can watch interviews with him when he's very confidently saying, like, yeah, it's so much cheaper than the drone ships, and then it doesn't go into sea, and it's like the best way to do it. And then they try it once or twice, and then they go, okay, scrap the whole thing, forget that we ever said that. It's like we're just dumping the rockets into the sea.
I like, by the way, I hate it when people feel like they just have to stick with what they originally said because they don't want to be like a flip-flopper. I feel like if you see the evidence goes differently than you expect, like, you want someone who will be flexible and go wherever the best path seems to be. So
yeah. And you can see this also on Relativity, who was like, yeah, we're going to 3D print the whole rocket. That's our secret sauce. And then they went bigger, and suddenly they're not 3D printing the rockets because they must have their engineering reasons for it, And that was a little bit that, like he's probably right on some of the points that that's the impression that I got. But okay, but then why wouldn't Rocket Lab then not change or iterate on that thing and then
I mean, they will.
Yeah.
They'll definitely have, block versions and upgrades and stuff like that. Yeah, I guess his big worry is he really thinks, I think ultimately the biggest problem or difference is he really thinks that Starship will be able to launch for $2 million, which is obviously like, less than like a third of Electron. So that's industry changing if that does happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a chance of that happening, but I think you also guys talked about it on the video, if that's also amortizing down certain costs.
He wasn't including like the fixed cost on that of all the ground infrastructure that you have to pay for across like all your different launches. That was more just the cost of each launch itself. So it wouldn't be exactly like that, but yeah.
Yeah, because this I have also been thinking after, like, that was actually a really good point in his interview, that I don't think there's an endless window of how many new rocket companies that you can have, because once you start to refly the rockets and then they start to be, as the cadence goes up, your reliability goes up, your costs come down. And if you have 2 or 3 companies that have, because I don't believe that Starship is going to be the only one that is the reusable. Like, I don't think anybody wants that, including Elon Musk, that they have an absolute monopoly in space and there's no other rocket companies.
Mhm.
But my question is, like, how many can you have? Because once, let's say you have a Starship that is launching very cheap, let's say you have a Neutron, and I don't know, let's say there is 2-3 others. How do you justify making a startup and investing, I don't know, billions of dollars to come up with a Starship competitor, and then you don't even have that much profitability anymore? Because if the launches come down to like 10 million a piece, which the big guys can do, because
yeah, well, that's an interesting one. And like from what he was saying, I think I've heard similar numbers. Apparently the R&D and development on Starship has been like 10 billion. So
yeah,
that's a lot of money you need to earn back across $2 million launches. So obviously you would want to earn that money back, and you wouldn't actually be charging 2 million if, or
yeah.
how many.
I want to take the calculator and just take the 10 billion and divide it on, like, if we just do head math. So let's say that it goes insane with Starship and they have 200 launches per year. Like, let's say for 10 years, that's 2,000 launches. Is that, like, you think, in the ballpark? Or
Maybe. I mean, it'll grow, so it'll start low and grow, but
okay, then let's say 5,000. So 10 billion. I don't have the thousand. I have to count the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a million. 10 million, 100 million, billion, 10 billion divided by 5,000. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's 2 million per launch R&D if they launch that much. In, like, that's a 10-year amortization on a 5,000 launch basis.
right.
But if they only do 2,500 launches, then it's 4 million. If they do, you
I
get
mean,
the
whether they can launch for that little on a cost basis of the actual launch and the fuel and stuff like that, they'll definitely charge a lot more because they can.
customers,
And
but
they want to earn
have
back
to
all those.
also, they have, because also that the R&D, I guess, is not going to stop. Like, they will iterate on the
for sure.
on the vehicle, right? So and I don't know how they calculate it. So we established with this calculation that it's impossible to reach the 2 million cost, because just the amortization of the R&D is 2 million without any fuel costs, without any refurb, like, without anything. So
Still a lot of mass to take to orbit in a single launch, though.
Yeah. Cool. So we should find a Rocket Lab there. We need, like, the Gordon Johnson of Rocket Lab, or
maybe not someone that out there, but
or Ross Gerber of Palantir.
yeah. Oh, I saw him like really bashing Palantir, saying they were evil and stuff like that. I was like, wow. But yeah, guys, people in chat, let me know if you know anyone who's very outspoken about it.
Yeah, we need to see a Rocket Lab. Is that a bullish sign that we like that
Maybe.
it's hard to find?
Or maybe it's just not big enough to have people, researching it for shorting purposes and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, could be. Cool. Then I have some other tweets here that was interesting that happened this week. This is more broader space news. One of them is about Momento Space. Let me share this. To be honest, before every Rocket Lab Weekly, I research what has happened in the space industry, and I don't know so much about Momenta Space. It seemed like you know maybe a little bit more about it than me. So I
Yeah, I mean, they were working on some sort of, from what I recall, like new form of propulsion for like in orbit kind of stuff. And they SPAC'd along with so many other companies. They went public via SPAC. And, you know, you can see they're raising $4 million here. I think anytime a company is raising like values that low and they're in the space industry, like you got to raise your eyebrow a little bit. I'm very concerned for their liquidity in the future, and I think they canceled working towards some launch or something like that. It's not one I've followed the closest, but it is, yeah, they seem in trouble. Again, the share price is just barely over $1, so once you drop below that, then you worry about delisting, and yeah, it looks like a tough situation for them.
Yeah, I looked into them a little bit, and I saw that they have like they burn or they lose 15 million per quarter, and they had like 7 million in Q3
Right.
in the bank, and so that means that they are like that they probably burnt all of that up, and they canceled an upcoming launch as you said on SpaceX, actually on a Falcon 9, and that's pretty bad when your job is to send up satellites and then you can't send up the satellites because you don't have enough liquidity to.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and the
And
thing
then you
is, they
raise.
can't raise, sorry, but they can't raise that much more either, or it'll send the share price below the $1 mark. So then you're looking at like maybe a reverse split or something. It's, yeah.
Yeah, so they are struggling. And then here's another company that also raised money, but they don't seem to be struggling, at least when I read their presentation. This one seems to be a Starlink-ish competitor, AST Space Mobile.
Yeah, like I've made a video or two on them. They're an interesting one. They've got their Blue Walker 3 satellite. They kind of argue about who had the first direct to cell phone call with this other company called Link, which is actually supposed to go public with Alex Rodriguez as the sponsor. But yeah, it's going to take them a while to scale up from what I understand. They're trying to get enough money to launch a bunch more of these satellites like you're showing there. And so there was actually two pieces of news that were released within 20 minutes of each other and caused a lot of confusion, because there was one piece saying they got some strategic investments from, I think it was Google and someone else, which was pretty good. And I think it sent the stock up. And then immediately after that, they're like, okay, we're raising money, which sent the shares way back down. So then it dropped like, I think another 20%. The interesting strategy they have, as you can see here with the partners, so they would work with all these operators, AT&T, Bell, whatever, so they wouldn't be.
And you see these are like these are strategic investors here, like Bell and Vodafone, and then I guess that these are over here contracted partners.
Yeah, that would kind of be more like, I think, customers eventually, where they could provide direct to cell service to people who have, you know, a Bell or Vodafone or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess it's a fantastic service because I know this, for example, in Sweden, we have this problem that the country is very, very big, and you know, there are certain cities where you have, I guess Canada must be the same.
Oh yeah, Canada's a big country, so we're like.
Do you also have this, that when you go a bit more remote, there is like sometimes very bad coverage, and sometimes even like, let's say you have a phone company and then they have like zero coverage, and if you were with another phone company, then you would have coverage in that area, right?
Yeah, it's pretty tough where I am, actually. It's funny, so we're all relatively far down south, close to the American border, but if you drive like north only a couple hours, it very quickly becomes like there's not a lot out there, just because it's, you know, colder and not as much infrastructure. So those kinds of places, Starlink does get used, and yeah, there could be markets for that.
Yeah, because I was thinking that it's a lot of money for these phone companies to, like, I think I heard that in some countries, like when they get licenses, then the government says like you're only allowed to put your thing in the big city if you also develop like the countryside, so that it doesn't become that the city folks have cell phones and then no one
Yeah.
else does. And then like cost efficiency wise, it's I imagine it must be way more cost efficient and faster just to pay for such a satellite company and to use their service if there are people even in that region.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's worth, building out cell towers in a lot of these places in northern Ontario or in a lot of remote locations.
Yeah. Okay, I'm curious what you think, because when I looked at this, I was like, okay, this company obviously has a limited amount of money and they are competing against Starlink. And whenever, like, both of them have to go to space, right? And these guys have to pay 65 million a launch to get a couple of satellites up, whereas Starlink has Falcon 9s that have flown like 19 times. And I wonder how much, like, it becomes very, how do you call it?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, it's an advantage for SpaceX, right? They would probably be launching on SpaceX, I would think, right now anyway.
yeah,
But yeah,
probably.
they'd be paying the full sticker price of 67, and SpaceX probably just paying their own cost for a launch, which is probably more like 20 something or so. It's tough to compete. Yeah, I've never invested in them. Some people have tried to tell me I should, and I just said, I have to wait until there's revenue. They're literally not making any money right now. So that's a scary place for me to be. I like to see the
Yeah.
revenues growing. So
Yeah, I mean, and what's crazy with this is that even if they send up a few satellites, the system doesn't work. Like, they need to have billions or I don't know if it's billions, but they need to have like a substantial amount of satellites up in the orbit to be able to get customer number one, because it doesn't really.
Their satellites are much larger than Starlink, and they're further out, so I think they can service a wider area. And I haven't looked into the technical stuff too closely, but I think they say they have some advantages over a Starlink in terms of direct to cell. And the technology tests have looked good, but again, I wouldn't. They just seem to have a long way to go, and only 200 million something. So yeah. But they have made some progress. Like they have all these partners who are like very, big deal
That does look
companies.
good. That does look good.
So.
I mean, both that it, like, I imagine that these companies are capital strong, meaning that if they need more money, like I guess Vodafone or Bell wouldn't let them just to.
I don't know. I mean, in this latest capital raise, it was kind of expected that they would get more money out of some of these strategic investors. So I forget who did invest in this latest round, whether Rakuten put in some more, but they didn't get as much as I think they thought they would. And then that's why they had to dilute and also take on more debt, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a very competitive space, and yeah, I always come back to, I really wonder what Rocket Lab is going to do, and I think that they're sitting back in their chairs, and they are evaluating the different business models, and they will have a huge advantage with the fact that they can reuse their own rockets, and they will not have to pay the sticker price when they are launching their own infrastructure.
Yeah. Like you can make it work if you're launching your own payloads. Even if your rocket is not quite as cheap as someone else's rocket, you can still have a good business, launching yourself and then operating that business. So
yeah. Cool. I mean, the next slide I have is the Rocket Lab earnings that we kind of touched on already. That it was announced this week that it is February 27th. My God, that's like more than a month away.
yeah. I'm always a
Do
little
you?
annoyed how far away the earnings date is, like when it comes to, you know, getting our Q4 results in like late February.
Yeah,
But
you know what I thought of, that we have this news that, yeah, like they always send back the earnings and they normally do like really well on keeping their guidance, and they guide like one quarter out, and it's like, of course, because on February 27th,
that's a
like
good
almost
point.
yeah.
They're like halfway through to
I mean,
the end of the quarter.
two-thirds through.
So maybe we're giving them too much credit then.
Yeah, I think so, because it's like, how would you, and that's the only thing they also guide for, so
Yeah, they always
they're like
guide one
keeping
quarter
it.
ahead. But then this previous Q3, they already guided for Q1. So that at least will be a little bit, further out, that they'll have to hit those numbers of like 100 million.
Yeah, I'm so curious. It's both of my companies, like Palantir and Rocket Lab. Like I feel that this earnings is so important, and I cannot wait. And Palantir, they pull their earnings forward, so like normally they have it
Oh
much
yeah.
later. So that's, I think, in like less than 2 weeks. But Rocket Lab, my God, is so
Yeah, I should
far out.
really research Palantir more. I mean, so many people seem so excited about it, but then it just makes me wonder if it's like a little over. It's like one of those things when everybody knows about something, is it still a great opportunity? I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it's funny because, I mean, this is obviously just my opinion. Like, when like ideally when you find like a really good long-term company, like it should go like 20-30% every year, right? But not in a line like this. It's,
Sure.
it has, yeah. And what's really nice with Palantir is that it hit $21, which was like a recent high, and then it's been on a 6 month sideways downwards trend. And at the same time, there seems to be amazing news about the company that people don't seem to pay attention to, so all the, like, yes, it's not at $6 anymore, like it's not the same good deal, but if we assume that Palantir is in this long-term, very, very like Apple-esque, uptrend, um or Salesforce uptrend, like I don't think it's a Tesla, where it goes like and then 10x and then down and then 10x. I think that's how Tesla is moving,
Yeah.
like this. Yeah. So if we assume that Palantir is moving nicely, then it just had a major pullback, like how everybody says that, yeah, I'll wait for the next pullback and then get in. And this is like, we just had a 6 month pullback and the company is doing amazing.
Well, maybe I'll take
So
a look at it then. I mean, it's already profitable, right? So shouldn't be too risky. Chris looks like he has a interesting tweet, though. I don't know if you noticed. Rocket Lab tweeted they did a few changes around the recovery of electron and reuse of it. So they added this little skirt around the engines and this new kind of silvery coating. So he's saying maybe this is the one that ends up getting fully reused. Do you think that's a possibility?
I have no clue, but it would be super good if they. I'm so curious. Like, I would love to be a fly on the wall when they have these engineering meetings, and like they recover a booster from the sea, and like,
Mhm.
what is it that they have to work on, right? Or what? Because I also wondered with SpaceX, because in the early um, times when they landed on a drone ship, and they're like, yeah, we will reuse this. I don't know if you remember those times, and it went like 6 months to 9 months and no reuse, no news, no. And I'm like, what are the engineers doing? Like the rocket
Yeah.
is built, produced, manufactured. It's there. And
I'm sure there's a lot
yeah,
of tests and stuff, and to determine what kind of condition everything's coming back in and taking it all apart again. And yeah.
you think that they take it apart?
The early ones, yeah.
Yeah,
Like the early
okay.
recovered rockets, I think so. And just to see if there's any other damage that they don't know about, maybe, or yeah. So yeah, I think hopefully we should be seeing like all the engines reused very soon, and then maybe a full Electron soon. Maybe it'll be this one. though you'd think that extra protection adds a little bit of mass.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it must be for like they must have added it to correct for something that they have seen somewhere, right?
You would think so, but then the engines were supposed to be in really good shape already, I thought. So it's odd that they're giving them this extra shielding, but they must have decided it's necessary.
Yeah, and also on the rocket, was it in the pounding the table interview? And Beck said that like he was always against these marine assets because the minute like something lands in the sea, like the sea just attacks it.
Yeah.
And he was surprised how well the carbon composite material like held up in the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when he makes that comment, it's like, okay, but what is the condition of the rocket? Because if it's only very little in the sea and they get it out, like, and carbon composite is a very durable material, so I don't think it's like they have to dry the rocket. And
No, I'm sure the tanks and stuff are probably fine, but electronics and everything in there, I'm sure there's a lot they have to think about. But I, have a lot of confidence that they're making progress and we're going to see a full reuse this year.
Yeah, I believe so also. Okay, a question. Have you heard of Stoke Space?
Yeah, I did a video about them recently.
Was it you who got me to? It might have been you that got me to look at them. Did you see this interview that he had with NASA spaceflight? The
Yeah.
CEO had it. Yeah. And what do you think about their concept? Because it's so different. Like it feels like when you look at the rockets, like every rocket is pretty much the same with their engine, and then and how they go about things. And then this rocket, I'm gonna find it and put it on the screen so the viewers can also see it. It's so different. And yeah. So what do you think about them as a company?
I think they have a cool idea. The CEO seems like a pretty smart guy. There's a long way to go from cool idea with, to be fair, they have done a bunch of testing and hops and stuff like that, and sounds like the concept could work. I'm sure this is a concept other people have thought about using before, like because they do cool like outside of engine bells like this. So it's not like nobody has ever thought of using cryogenic fuels for cooling. So yeah, I'm just curious like why they think this is kind of the secret sauce solution. And SpaceX is going with tiles, and different companies go with different options. So
yeah, again, it would be so amazing to be a fly on the wall on these engineering meetings, because when he did this interview and he was going through the plus points and the minus points of like if you really want rapidly reuse. So again, just for the viewers, their rocket engine is not with bells, so it's like all these flames that you see. It's not that they have like 15 engines. It's like one engine, and somehow the fuel is in this outer ring. If I understood it, you can correct me if I didn't understand it
yeah,
correctly.
that's pretty much right.
And then you see this heat shield that is coming down is somehow like the tank out, like that is put there, and the cryogenic fuel is run through that, and that's how they cool the rocket. And one of the main plus points with that is that the rocket, when it lands, it's cold and like usable temperature. And the other option that you have is what SpaceX is using with the heat tiles, or what the shuttle program was using with the heat tiles, is a system that they think needs like too much maintenance. And the tiles can crack, they can fly off, and every time you land, the machine has to cool off. I don't know how long that takes, because the tiles come in very hot apparently. And then you have to really inspect and make sure that the tiles are not broken. Maybe you need to service them, and it's not so reusable, because this one basically lands cold and you refuel it and then you fly again.
Yeah. I mean, the tiles was kind of the downfall of the shuttle system being, super quick to reuse and cheap. So, but SpaceX thinks they've made a bunch of progress on it. It's an interesting concept. I do wonder if they have to carry a lot of extra fuel, because I feel like just a little bit they need for that landing burn. Probably not enough to cool during re-entry the whole bottom of the craft, but we'll see. I'm sure there's compromises made somewhere. There's always compromises people have to make when they're designing these rockets.
Yeah. And again, an additional thing that was very interesting with this one is normally you have to have like a vacuum optimized engine, and then you have to have like a sea level optimized engine. And then as you can see, this is their second stage that is reusable. And then on the sea level, like you have these, like, I don't know how you say it, like flames or spikes that is like the same engine basically. And then somehow, like when they're in the vacuum, like with the heat shield, like you can see it actually here now, that it creates like an aero spike, I think it's called, which is like a different effect altogether that is very good for vacuum. So it's somehow like optimized for both vacuum and sea level in a very, very clever engineering way.
Yeah, again, looks super cool. Now they got to do it, so we'll see. Relativities, I'm not saying they're Relativity, but Relativity had a super cool idea for a fully reusable rocket that they eventually gave up on. So
yeah, that's also something that is always in the back of my mind when I watch these. Again, we talked about this in the beginning, that you always have to take this with a grain of salt, because just because your big brain engineers come up in the design room that this might work, it doesn't actually mean that it works, and you might have to completely pivot away from this idea. But it's still a very interesting, novel thing. You don't see this every day.
For sure.
Cool. This was all the topics I had for today. Is there anything that you feel like you want to cover or mention, or?
I don't think so. I think we probably got to most of the recent news items.
Yeah. Cool. I just want to see in the comments if there is anything that if we have an open question or something. I don't know if you saw any questions. I mean,
just Chris and Francisco, talking about reusability and stuff we mentioned.
And Chris might be coming to Sweden.
Oh yeah.
And we talked about it, because on Twitter he makes like these fantastic fountains. And I tweeted to him like, oh, I wish that you were in Sweden. And then he was like, I can come and do work for you in Sweden, because he has apparently some family in Europe that he could visit. And I do real estate projects, so
oh yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah, unfortunately, because it's very high interest rates here, so the real estate is not going so good. That's also what I said to him, that like right now many projects are on ice, and on not every project do we have to do gardens. But there is a specific project where there is a lot of it's like 16 apartments that we will be building, and that there yeah, like there is quite a big and nice garden where it could be space and for the fountains. But I'm not the only decision maker, so I can only promise that I will take it up with the guys that are the decision makers, and I will push for but that would be super cool if he would come and do some work here.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of stuff he worked on. It looked pretty nice.
Yeah. Plus, this is apparently how he gets all the inside info for us, because some that's what I understood. Some rich Virginia people are talking too much while he's doing the gardening. Cool. Thank you so much for today, Dave. And I think next week, it's been so many red days. I would be very surprised if we wouldn't get some rebound now If not, I will put my option or my
Yeah, I was gonna
shares.
say I'll be watching next week with interest to see if it hits that. What is it, 450?
450, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Matt has $5 puts that are also expiring this week.
Oh, so he's likely to get put it then.
Yeah, we see.
Well, we'll see. I mean, always exciting when you do these options.
We're at 486. I mean, it's like one green day and then he's not put.
Yeah, that's true.
Cool. So thank you so much. Thanks for everyone for being here. You find Dave's data in the description box below. Please make sure you follow him and check out his channel. And see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye-bye.